Hi everyone, I'm Heath Hightower, co-host of Process Recordings. Before we get started with today's show, I want to just give you a quick reminder. While Lisa and I hope you find our show useful, we also want you to know that it's not a substitute for therapy. If you do need a therapist, however, we do recommend that you check out the psychologytoday.com website. Also, if you need immediate support, contact 988, which is the 3-digit number to contact the National Crisis Hotline and Suicide number. Thanks for listening and watching, and enjoy the show. Hi, I'm Heath Hightower.
And I'm Lisa Wessan.
And this is Process Recordings, the show where we talk about real human problems and we offer real solutions to some of life's most common difficulties. Hi, Lisa.
Hello.
How are you?
Great to be back.
Good to be back.
Love this topic.
Yeah, gratitude. So what are we going to talk about today?
Well, as we promised in our last episode, this section is part 2 is always tips, techniques. We like to call being tactical and practical. You know, people like skills. You know, I always say I believe in skill power, not willpower. You know, willpower is very flimsy. It's not sustainable. Yeah. When you learn skills, and we're going to teach you some skills today, you've got more power to you. You know, and you can practice skills, and then you get better at them, which I love.
Yeah. And so just as a reminder, when we talk about gratitude, we are talking about the ability to experience and express appreciation for whatever is authentically appreciable in your life. Like, we really want you to teach you tools and techniques that will help you first be aware of the things that you are really grateful for. And then also, how can you take that awareness forward, learn from it, and then engage in practices that fit into your life that allow you to experience more gratitude in that life.
Yes, and in the last episode, for those of you who did not hear it yet, you might want to go back and listen because we talked about the dual nature of gratitude and grief and the importance of being able to hold grief and gratitude, or sadness and gratitude simultaneously. That is a healthy thing to do because we know that quote from Queen Elizabeth, you know, grief is the price you pay for love. So there's no escape. And learning to be able to sit with that is a big part of maturity, and having more gratitude and more anticipatory savoring when you can be very upset about somebody who's in an ER and feel grateful at the same time.
Yeah. And I think that that point is really important given what you said in the last episode as well, given that some people use gratitude to avoid those really hard emotions.
Yes.
And sometimes the workplaces or the friendship groups or the family systems that people live in also kind of enable that. Be grateful for your health. Be grateful that you've got a roof over your head. And it kind of puts pressure on people to avoid talking about what oftentimes really needs to get talked about.
Right. You don't want to hear, at least you have food and shelter, and at least you can walk, you know, like, I mean, that is so annoying. I always want to slap people who tell me I should be grateful.
Yeah.
But I don't want to repeat myself from last show. That's, you know, basically what we talked about in more detail.
Yeah.
So now we're going to go into tips and tools.
Yeah. So my favorite tool to help people build awareness, because part of what I've learned in my practice with clients is that most people actually don't know what they are really grateful for. They are pretty good at rattling off what they should be grateful for, or maybe what they ought to be grateful for. But most people lack a real awareness of authentic gratitude. So the first question that I will often ask them is what I call an introspective gratitude practice, which is ask yourself some version of the following question. As you think about what is in your life, whether it's people, places, things, pets, etc., imagine what would be missing from your life that would make a huge difference to the quality of your life. So if you imagine everything that's in your life, not everything equally gives you the same amount of gratitude. Not all of it is of equal importance to you. So if you're not sure what you're grateful for, think about the things that if they were absent from your life, that absence would have a dramatic impact on your overall quality of life. So that's an introspective.
Yes. Which missing person, place, or thing would cause the greatest void?
Yeah.
What would hurt you the most? And then you realize that's what I'm grateful for.
Right. Exactly. Exactly.
I love that. And also it's a good homework assignment to give people.
Yeah. It's a good homework assignment. And I think the other thing to just be aware of too, because this is just what feels real in my own life, is what I feel grateful for has shifted and changed over time. Like the things that I felt grateful for in my, when I was 8 years old is very different than what I feel grateful for at 50, almost 51.
Of course.
So I do think it's important for us to kind of revisit these questions every now and again, just to kind of update what does and what doesn't actively contribute to our life. The other intervention or other technique or tool that I like to use in my practice is, again, for those people who may not be aware of what they are grateful for, is that I ask them to go out into the world and just use their senses. What do you notice on a walk? What do you notice in terms of the sights, sounds, smells, etc.? And everything that you're noticing, give it a gratitude value. So when you see that tree in the public park that you walk by every single day and probably take for granted, on a scale from 0 to 10, 0 being no gratitude at all, 10 being the most amount of gratitude that you can ever imagine having, how much gratitude does that tree give you? And kind of just do that with everything that you are noticing on that walk, right?
I love that.
And just it starts giving you a sense of the continuum of gratitude, because gratitude isn't something you either have or don't have. It's something that we experience in gradations. And becoming aware of those gradations may start building your repertoire of things that you are grateful for.
Right, exactly. And there's a very popular practice out now, again, from, I don't know why I block his name, that guy.
Oh, Martin Seligman.
Yeah, Martin Seligman. I read his book in positive psychology, but the 3 good things. A lot of people are doing this, even Weight Watchers. Everyone's like, dude, write your 3 good things. But it's actually very powerful to focus on 3 good things at night before you go to sleep. Yeah. And again, they could be on the micro level, like I took a shower, or I did some exercise, or I ate healthy food, or the macro level, like, oh, I won an award, or I'm whatever. Yeah. So, focusing on the 3 good things, it's a very simple format. And then to add to that, there are many different ways to journal. And one of the things I like to recommend is being able to, in a very short bullet kind of version of journaling, list about 5 to 10 things you're grateful for, and then send love to 3 people who annoy or bother you. Like this can all happen in 3 minutes. And then sit quietly for a couple of minutes, just being still, and then ask for guidance for the day. Now, if you are an atheist, you can ask wise mind or your higher self or that part of you, the subconscious, whatever. If you're a spiritual person, you can talk to your deity or your higher power, whatever, source energy, the universe. But the idea is having a little gratitude routine is very helpful. So to me, this is a very balanced routine. And also, sometimes I tell people to write down the 5 things they're grateful for, and then write down the 5 things you're most terrified about. You make a gratitude list, fear list, to-do list, and then ask for the guidance. So that is a structure, and it's a practice. And if you do it every day, you build, can I say, gratitude muscle.
Sure.
And you appreciate more. You appreciate more when you focus on what am I grateful for? Like you think about it, you start feeling more gratitude. Yeah. That's all. And so I think it's worth pursuing however you do it. There's a million ways, there's 10,000 paths up this mountain of gratitude. There's even the gratitude journal, which I'm not going to tell you. Somebody gave this to me last year when I was going through medical trauma in my family to help me be more grateful. And I wanted to smack. I was so annoyed by this gift. But the funniest thing is, it's like, there's some good quotes in here and there's some annoying exercises. But the idea is to practice, to do something to find more gratitude. Yeah. And it's become a cottage industry, frankly, all these gratitude products.
Yeah. Yeah. And so I think part of what, you and I both agree on is that because we talked about gratitude as being this double-sided coin, that thing that you just showed people, the gratitude journal, in our opinion, would be really an example of something that's closer to a toxic positivity kind of tool, right? A kind of tool, because what it essentially says is, every single day of the week, we're going to give you these fairly lengthy quotations and things to think about, which you may not actually want to think about.
That's right.
Right? So part of what we want to really emphasize for people is, A, we want you to do what's authentic, and we want you to do things that are going to increase the probability that with some practice, it's going to feel more and more authentic. So I'm actually not going to be terribly prescriptive about my tools, tips, and techniques, because doing them every day might not feel authentic to somebody.
Somebody else once or twice a week.
That's right.
Once a month.
That's right. Exactly. The goal is to find a practice that feels good to you and works for you.
Has to be a good fit.
Yeah. And so I'm wondering, what other tips, tools, and techniques? Oh, that gem.
We have some props here today on the teacher and me. So I was on a retreat once where
it's a jar for those of you at home.
If they can see this, I don't know. It's a jar. Anybody can make this. It's an old mason. You get a mason jar, piece of fabric. I like spirals. I put a little glittery, shiny spiral here because I love spirals. And you open the jar up, and what happens is you get little pretty pieces of paper. What I use some pretty, you can even use leftover bits of wrapping paper and just in the back of it, and you write down things you're grateful for, Or it can also be considered, this jar goes by many names. It can be a gratitude jar. It can be a worry jar where you put in the things you're stressing about to get relief. It can also, the religious people call it the God jar. Giving this to God. I'm giving it to God. So it can be whatever you want to call it. I like the gratitude jar, and reminding myself that sometimes even the things that are very difficult ultimately are for my good, which is a very advanced state of consciousness. I'm not always in it. The idea that everything that's happening to me is happening for me. Love the idea. I can't always sit with it, but I work more and more on that level. So anyway, the gratitude jar, the God jar, the worry jar is an activity. You can write it down. Now, if somebody's really aggravating you and giving you hell, you just can't stand them and you're really pissed off about something, whatever, you can put their name in the jar and just put a name on the piece of paper. It's this person, I want them out of my head. I don't want them living in my head. The damn it jar. Exactly. Right. And you can just the idea is you put it in the jar.
Yeah.
And then, maybe once a month or every 6 months, you take everything out and you look and you see what resolved. And it's a very good feeling. I'll look at these things in 6 months and go, oh my God, I was worrying for nothing. Or that one was good. So it's a fun thing to do, put it in the jar. And also it's a way of detaching, getting it out of your body, the issues in our tissues. When you write down the thing that's upsetting you or that you're grateful for, you're releasing it and not obsessing.
Yeah, I think for me personally, I would want a dedicated jar to all of those different experiences, so I wasn't mixing and matching my jars.
You need a damn it jar.
I would need a damn it jar. I would need a gratitude jar, so that I could actually burn the stuff in my damn it jar.
Right.
But then I could pick the stuff out at the end of every month of my gratitude jar, just to remind me that over the course of a month, there was a lot of crap that I should be really grateful for, really good stuff, right?
It's fun.
So I love that idea.
You can make it, and it can be as creative as you want. If you go online, if you Google worry jar or God jar or damn it jar, I'm sure you're gonna. This was in somebody's gratitude jar. There's 1,000 ways to make these things. Yeah. You can even use an old shoebox and decorate it with pretty paper. I mean, there's all kinds of things. Yeah. So I happen to like the mason jar, but it's fun. It's a fun exercise, and it makes you feel good to do it. I like the feeling of writing a note and sticking it. Just the feeling of getting it out of my head. There's power when you write it down and you get it out. So.
And so
I like having. It's a good idea to have several jars.
Yeah, I like I would need several jars because I like to silo my feelings.
That's right, silo the feelings. That's good.
So what I'm really liking about the writing is it's making me think of another positive psychology intervention, which is the gratitude letter.
Yes.
Now, for those of you at home, the gratitude letter is where you pick a person in your life that you are grateful for some way, in some way, shape, or form. It doesn't have to be, it can be for a micro thing, like someone brought you brownies when you were sick, or someone watched your kids when you had to work an extra shift at work. So the way that the gratitude letter works is you sit down. Handwritten is a little bit better, according to the research, than typing. But if you need to type it because you've got atrocious handwriting like me, then you probably should type it. You type the letter, and the goal is to be as specific and as detailed about what you are grateful for as possible. The more detailed, the more this exercise is likely to work. I actually did this exercise about 9 years ago when I was in my hometown over the summer, and I had heard that my favorite teacher ever, Mrs. Barker, who was my 11th and 12th grade English teacher, had retired. And she had retired prematurely because she had been diagnosed with a macro degenerative disorder in her eyes. She was becoming blind. And so I got a sense of where Mrs. Barker lived from a friend who indicated that she lived just outside of town. So I called Mrs. Barker up, asked if I could come see her. And she said, "Oh, yes, come see me." So in my hotel the night before, I write this letter to her, telling her everything that she had meant to me. And I'm writing this letter and I'm weeping by the time I'm done.
Beautiful.
Right?
Yeah.
And I'm driving my car the next morning out to her house, to Padilla Bay. And I'm like starting to feel overwhelmed with joy. This woman was like a second mother to me. She was an intellectual mentor. She was a straight shooter who told me that my writing was technically good, but I needed to fucking find my voice. She actually used that language.
Very direct.
Very direct. I loved that about her. So I get to Padilla Bay, and I'm afraid I'm not even going to be able to get to the front door because I am so overwhelmed with emotion. So I get to the front door, and now I think I'm going to wet my pants because I'm like so overcome with emotion. So I pound on the door. She opens the door. She gives me this big hug, and I'm like, "Mrs. Barker, I'm so glad to see you." And she thought like something was wrong, and I just hold the letter out, and she opens the letter, and then we have another embrace, and we had a lovely, lovely, lovely chat about everything that she had meant to me. Now, here's the real power of the letter. The power is obviously, one, the writing. Two is the face-to-face delivery of the letter.
Yes.
But here is the mind-blowing part. The amount of gratitude that the average person will experience after you've done this, I was feeling like I was on cloud nine for like weeks after. And if I went back to the literature, to the research that indicated on average, people had an elevated sense of gratitude for up to 2 weeks after they had done this exercise.
Isn't that wonderful? Thank you for that great anecdote.
Thanks. Yeah.
And I agree. I'm of the school. I mean, I am a writer, so I do enjoy writing thank you notes.
Yeah.
But I have to say that it gives me pleasure, and it's a pleasure that comes back like a boomerang several times. How many times, I'm sure it's happened to you, you write a thank you note, then somebody calls you to thank you for your thank you note,
Right.
and then you thank them. It goes on and on.
Right.
It's a very warm feeling.
Yeah.
So this may sound cheesy and corny, but it's not.
Yeah.
And writing the thank you note, I have some beautiful stationery that I save for some thank you notes. And for the smallest, again, for the micro or the macro, it's lovely to express your gratitude. And as I said in the first show, from William Arthur Ward, I want to repeat it again. Feeling gratitude and not expressing it is like wrapping a present and not giving it. So it's a gift that keeps on giving, and it does go deep. Yeah. And what a beautiful story. And you touched her heart. I'm sure she was so moved.
Oh, well, and
you touched, moved, and inspired both of you.
Yeah, very much so. And it's funny because in November or October of 2021, she died. And I remember my friend from high school had texted me. I was on vacation at the time and had indicated that it had happened. And I remember how filled with warmth I was to know that she died well. She died surrounded by friends and family.
She had a good death.
She had a really, really good death. And she did some really great things in her post-teaching career that made me feel so grateful that I had known her, and that in some way, shape, or form, every time I'm in front of the classroom teaching, she's there teaching.
She's with you. You're channeling her.
Well, right, exactly. Like I catch myself like being direct with some of my students the way she was with me, because again, it was so effective for me.
It totally works. I love that.
So yeah, so I'm really kind of aware of that.
Beautiful, beautiful. I hope you guys are taking this in and you do your version of it. Obviously, we all have our interpretations of the gratitude letter.
Yeah.
You know, I want to share another kind of gratitude, which is more unusual, that I came upon when I was researching for getting through my notes, my book notes. There is a book called Hello Sleep by Dr. Jade Wu, W-U, and she is she runs a sleep science lab at Duke University, and she taught me that it's good to develop a relationship with your sleep as if it's an entity. Don't be angry or upset with your sleep. Instead, ask it, what do you need? Those of us that have sleep problems, this is important. So how can I help, versus being upset or angry or, oh my God, I can't sleep again. What's wrong with me? So Dr. Wu suggests you write a gratitude letter to your sleep. Now, when I first read that, I thought, what? And I'm always open-minded and skeptical.
You're a scientist.
I'm a scientist. I will try anything at least once. So writing the gratitude, this is a new one. And I want to say, folks, the first time I wrote the gratitude to my sleep, I was surprised that the sleep actually talked back to me. Some voice in my head, some part in the IFS School of Psychology, some part said to me, darling girl, you worry too much about your sleep. You're like obsessed with your sleep. Just calm down with the sleep. And like it said this nice thing to me, you're getting it. You could use more sleep, but you're not that bad. Anyway, so I wrote to the sleep, and I have to say it was a very powerful exercise, thinking of your sleep as an entity or personality. So I wanted to share that on the gratitude. A tip, especially if you have sleep issues. I do like this book, Hello Sleep. It's an excellent book, and she's different from Matt Walker's book on why we sleep. He's the Harvard sleep specialist. I read his book, was excellent too, very good. But she takes a very different approach. So writing a gratitude letter to your anger. You can write a gratitude, and this took me on to another path, like writing gratitude letters to uncomfortable feelings. What is going on with that? And it's an exercise that's very delicate, and I'm just starting to experiment really with writing a gratitude letter to my feeling parts. Because they're there to teach me something.
Right. Well, and as you like to say so often, you're learning forward.
Yes.
Right. And one way to learn forward is to try new things that might make you feel more grateful, or might teach you something that you didn't know about yourself before.
Yes, this is learning forward.
Yeah. And so being grateful for yourself for being willing to try those new things. And to give those things a shot, but also to be skeptical because they may not work for you. But to do it with an open heart and an open mind, I think, is a really important part about gratitude, because one of the ways that you actually know that your gratitude practice is working is it does open you up. It opens you up to being able to hold all of the complex feelings. It opens you up to acknowledging that even feelings that we're taught are negative, are bad, have something to teach us about what we need or want for our lives. And it's pursuing those things that we need and want for our lives that make us feel grateful, right?
Yes.
And so I think that that's a really lovely experiment that you're engaged in.
It's an experiment. And I want to just say, by the way, the learning forward is from my dear friend Jill. Jill Barron. She wrote the book Don't Mess with Stress, and she didn't like my failing forward. I used to say I'm failing forward. She found that very negative. I still like to say I'm failing forward because it's it's good to be humbled and like I screw up regularly, but it's good to know that I can fail and still do well. The idea of feeling grateful for the turmoil and crisis and incredibly painful stuff, knowing that you're going to evolve out of it, reminds me of this quote. It's a proverb. Just when the caterpillar thought the world was over, it became a butterfly.
Right.
Now, I think each of us goes through multiple chrysalis. Chrysalis is the period when the pupa, when the caterpillar melts down, the imaginal cells destroy the whole caterpillar. Can you imagine what it's like being a caterpillar and suddenly you liquefy? You are literally liquefying.
Right.
Holy hell. And then after this, the imaginal cells do their amazing thing. The scientists don't even know how this works. After a certain period, you emerge from the cocoon a butterfly. Now, that's in nature, and that's why I only wear butterflies and spirals in my jewelry, because I believe these are two very powerful processes. The point being that when you're having a meltdown or a breakdown, you are going through a chrysalis period and embracing that and saying, okay, but I'm going to come out a butterfly. I'm coming out a butterfly. I don't know when, I don't know how. And I know it gives me comfort. When I go through my many crises lately with people in my life, I'm coming out of this okay. And I want you all to have the idea that you're not having a breakdown, you're having a breakthrough. You're getting stronger. You can do hard things. Thank you, Glennon Doyle. She said you can do hard things in her book Untamed. Yes, you can do hard things. I can get through this. And then you ask the how question. How can I get more support? How can I get more help? How can I get the right medication? How can I get the right yoga? Whatever. What do you need to get through the crisis? And that chrysalis is brutal. Yeah. But yet, we become butterflies. Yeah. And it's coming out. It's not the coming out. Yeah. It's not the same as coming out like when you're gay, but it's a coming out process, coming out of the depression into the joy or the gratitude, coming out of the grief into the gratitude is another kind of coming out process, which is very painful sometimes, but that's what we go through. This is life.
Right.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. And it's making me think about other ways in which we can engage in this process. So a lot of the tools and techniques that we've talked about so far have really been things that individual people can do for themselves to kind of acknowledge or become more aware of their gratitude. But I'm thinking about something that my best friend from college, Allison, used to do, which is they would do a gratitude check-in around the dinner table every night. She had read some positive psychology stuff. And so very early on, part of the dinner time ritual was really checking in about highlights and lowlights. What were the highlights of the day? And that was the gratitude part. Mm-hmm. And part of what I loved about it is whatever the lowlights were, the follow-up question was, that's really interesting. What is that teaching you about what you need or what you want? Which is a life skill, right? That a lot of our clients don't have.
Exactly.
They don't have the life skill of knowing what do I need and what do I want for my life. And then if there was a real concrete solution to the problem that was part of the low light, they would then focus on the low light.
Wonderful.
Right? Which again, another life skill, basic problem solving. So I think one of the other things to think about is that gratitude can be contagious. Mm-hmm. Like if you're going around the table and you're hearing the things that people are grateful for, that can sometimes trigger or be like a domino effect and like make you feel grateful for similar things.
It is. I think it's energetically contagious as well, like on that quantum field level, the subspace level. So what I'm hearing too is I love the highlights, the lowlights. I call them roses and thorns. Like in my DBT group, we always start the session with like, what were some of the roses and thorns this week? Because a rose is a beautiful thing, but it has some thorns. And there's always positive and negative. So it takes the stigma out of having the dark and the negative. Yeah. We're going to be wrapping up soon. So I want to thank you all for joining us today at Process Recordings. I'm Lisa Wessan.
I'm Heath Hightower.
And we're here every month doing a couple of shows. Thank you for joining us. Good health is wealth. Definitely go for it. And remember, you have the ability to embrace the gratitude and the grief, the thorns and the roses, and the highlights and lowlights. You don't have to get a PhD to do this. You can do this on your own. Take care and be well. We'll see you next time.
Bye-bye, everybody.
Bye.
Process Recordings is produced by Lisa Wessan and Heath Hightower, with technical support from Chelmsford TeleMedia, the community media center of Chelmsford, Massachusetts.